Hello and welcome to Unit 34 of this course in Global English. We are in writing module, Unit 13, the last unit of this module. We have spoken about writing small 2-line, 3-line, 4-line mails, slightly bigger focused letters, then notes and reports, and we have been talking about essays. In between, we have also talked about some features of good writing, features like common words, simple sentences, then what we called easy to read, coherence and cohesion and that sort of thing. Today, we are going to talk about how to build, how to develop and then how to write it. Of course, I am not suggesting by any chance that you can write a good essay in a single draft. It is possible for some people, some people can always do things which otherwise appear to be difficult or even impossible to many others. But I am talking about many others, talking about common people, people like you and me and us, more simple, less gifted people, how we can develop a writing style, a sense of prose using which we can write good essays, good notes, good reports and convey our point of view and convince our readers. So, in this unit, we are going to take some closer look at one or two other aspects of essay writing that we could not look at in the earlier unit, in unit 12 of the module on writing. So, let us go. How do we write an essay? How do we build an essay? What kind of things can we say there? Where shall we get them from? What kind of things we need not say, even if we know they may not be relevant, they may not be significant on that particular topic. Okay. So, one good rule of thumb is present the given view first. Whatever has been given to you as a topic, okay, present that, what is the underlying meaning of the topic, say that first, and then once that is done, then develop it, explain it, either support it or contradict it, it does not matter either way. Actually, ideally speaking, a good essay would look at both points in support and counterpoints that do not support. Okay. So, let us look at the points that support. The points that support the evidence, the argument, some examples can be presented or can come from different sources and can be presented in many ways. It is possible you can cite an entire table, a graph, a chart, other things in support. But if you have only 250 words, which means barely 2 pages, A4 size pages, then a graph would take a lot of space and you may not be able to take out all that may be relevant or required in the graph. So, it is better that you cite relevant parts. So, actually there are 4 or 5 ways in which you can present evidence. Say for example, it can be the most simple ways to present anecdotal evidence. Anecdote is a short story from your life. It is pronounced anecdote, not anecdote, anecdote. So anecdote is a short story from your real life, your experience somewhere. You were going by train somewhere and you found something wrong, and then what you did. So that experience has stayed with you. Or you saw something somewhere and that has stayed with you. Like the other day in the earlier unit, in unit 33, writing 12, in essay writing part 1, we said that letting a child access computers does not necessarily mean that the child will abuse it. There are all kinds of families and there are all kinds of children. So we cited the examples of 2 children, but both from my experience. She would also help her friends. So there are examples on both sides. You can cite one or the other. By itself that does not prove anything, but nevertheless that is evidence, though that is anecdotal, 1 or 2 here or there in your experience. My experience might be different, or in my experience your experience might be different. So but nevertheless it is also some kind of evidence. Then there is empirical evidence, collected. 100 people studied and you find that 71 people behave in a particular manner, another 20 in yet another manner, and then there are about 9 people who behave still more differently. And you cite them and you say that of course 21 people or 20 people who had access to computer made nothing of their life, they ruined their life, they did not put their opportunity to any good use. But the 71 others who also had access to internet and computers in their early childhood, found that it was very useful. They became proficient in computer early in their life, and they also did well at school and in their social life, in their career. Okay. 9 other people were neither here nor there. Just as statistics is presented in medical histology, you often come across advertisements, smoking causes cancer. So there are statistical records, there are surveys which say that of all people suffering from cancer, at least 40% people were smokers. So many people were tobacco chewers, etc., etc. So we conclude that tobacco, no matter how big a cash crop it might be, is a positive threat to the well-being of the society, right? But then it is empirical evidence. You have studied a certain set of people and you have found a certain number of them behaving in a particular manner or having gone through a particular experience, good or bad. It is equally possible, at least in theory, that if you take another 100 people, another 100,000 people in another situation of another background, the number may be much higher or much lower, or may not be there at all, or may be there. Okay. So these truths are not universal truths. They are empirical, based on certain statistical data obtained through observation, survey of or with a certain group. There may be universal, like man is mortal. Where there is fire, there is smoke. Okay. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. These are universal truths. So similarly, there are socio-psychological things, like you can say man is a social animal. You can say fear goes away when confronted. You are afraid of fear only until you have faced it. Once you face fear, the fear disappears. It cannot stay. Just as the example, and then you cite a universal and give a particular example. Many people fear getting into water before swimming, a lot of people are afraid, are scared getting into water. They scream, they have to dragged, they have to be coaxed and convinced. But once they get in, once they start throwing their hands and feet, they gather confidence and they start swimming, then there is no fear of water. The fear has disappeared. The water is the same, the individual is the same, but confronting the fear has removed fear. So there are pieces of evidence also of this kind, seen over a period of time, found true by all without an exception. So we say this is a universal truth. There can be narrative, essays can be made interesting or uninteresting. Only data do not make it interesting, only evidence and examples do not. It also depends upon how examples are presented, how they are shared. Okay. So, for example, imagine there is a topic which says discuss. Some people say monarchy was better, you spent no money on elections, there was no bribing of the voters, there was no election campaign, and you still got the same government. Many people say no, democracy is better, because if your government doesn't behave well, you can change it. In monarchy, that is not possible. And they give examples. They said if a monarch became autocratic, dictatorial, not guided by conscience or law, then so they cite the example of the Queen of Hearts. This story comes in a wonderful book by somebody called Lewis Carroll, and the book is called Alice in the Wonderland. So you can bring in sometimes direct narratives to make the story interesting. A lot of people say that democracy is a very good form of government, because in the monarchical system, if the king or the queen, the head of the state, becomes autocratic, there is no way you can change it. Okay. And then there is the story of the Queen of Hearts, and one day she got angry and told her guards, off with his head. So you get an impact, you get an effect which you do not get when you say that indirectly. And then the queen told her guards to cut the head of the minister off. It's like a report by a policeman to the judge, etc., etc. Okay. There can be testimonials. Frequently you see in advertisements, big players, big stars tell you that this particular brand of cold drink is good and that particular brand of cold drink is still better. And when you hear it from noted, celebrated, well known players, actors, leaders, etc., celebrities, then you perhaps think, no, it's indeed a good drink, we should try it. So that is called testimonial. Somebody, you have not tasted it, you have not even tested it, you have not examined it, but somebody else you trust or you respect says it is good, and then you think it is good. So there can be different ways of presenting evidence and from different sources, but a good essay, that is the point I am making. A good essay is not just theory, it is not just argument, it is not just presenting your point of view, it also includes examples, points, evidence, counterpoint, counter evidence, okay, to become interesting and to become effective. So you must, in the earlier unit we presented anecdotal evidence, one boy, one girl, etc., etc. You may write an essay on another topic and present another kind of evidence. It may be empirical, it may be universal, it may be narrative, it may be testimonial. Okay. Right? Let us go on. For practice, we have traditionally in schools and colleges written essays on 2 or 3 word topics. They are also fine. I am not saying they are not good. They are okay. Sometimes you are also given issues related to these things. Say for example, write an essay on cow, and then you are told, okay, cow is part of India's agricultural tradition or cultural tradition, etc., etc. Quite often you just get only these two, the one word cow. Write an essay on cow, or on Indian agriculture, or on Indian culture, or a festival you like most, or a wedding you witnessed, your last summer vacation. They are also fine. They are descriptive. You can describe these essays in the required length, giving required details, etc., etc. But more modern examinations, particularly at the global level, international proficiency examinations, for the English language, there are many examinations conducted internationally that test your proficiency. Now, in those examinations also, for those examinations also, you have to write essays. Now, those essays are slightly different. They are more contemporary, they are non-political, non-gender biased, non-violent, non-vulgar, not religious. Okay, they are on common concerns. They are on topics that concern nearly every human being in this world. Things like environment, things like work culture, things like education, things like modern technology, things like modern lifestyle. So, that sort of essays. And then you also get rubric telling you what you should look at and what you can ignore, and that sort of thing. You can take any of these topics and develop them the way you like for the sake of practice. You see, look at the first topic. It says one parent must stay home. Do you agree? Well, you may or you may not. What it means to say is that these days, particularly when both parents work, then leaving your child at home, particularly young children, infants, alone at home or only with servants or helpers or all the time in creche, may not be a wonderful idea. So, some people therefore say one parent must stay home at least until the child is old enough to look after itself. Okay. Do you agree? Now, you will have to examine aspects. What if both children are away? Does it cause any harm? Look at those, list those harms if there are any harm. Yes, either there is too much indulgence, others do not want to make the child cry, so they indulge, they give to the child whatever the child wants, whatever, or they are a little too strict. Unlike parents, parents bend and parents also make the child bend. Okay. That is why they are parents, because they do whatever they do with lots of love. Their love cannot be questioned. Okay. So, you can examine it with evidence from both sides, and then you can come to conclusion. Similarly, there is another topic, big retail stores or big retail store chains hurt employment, culture and freedom. Discuss. What it means is, you have big chain stores. They can deliver a soap at your place. They can deliver small quantities of fruits or vegetables or eggs or meat or anything, or car or cots or big television or computer set, anything you like. Okay. And they also bring it cheap and in time, quickly, no hassle, good quality thing. Is it okay to buy everything only from them? Some people say yes, because consumer can stay at home, has a choice, can return, gets it cheaper, no hassle. So, why not? There are others who say, look, this might look all good in passing, but it is not all that good. Number one, it cuts the employment of that lots of street corner shops used to create for those small shops, those small shops that were part of your residential locality, that were part of your village or town or your street in a big city. So, so when you start buying from big companies, then you are taking away the employment of these people. Plus there is a culture of oneness, community. You have money or you don't, you pay now or later, you pay cash or credit. Of course, many facilities are there also at chain retail stores, but not in the manner in which it used to be available through street corner shops. So, an entire culture of bondage and mutual awareness of reciprocal relationship. You help me, I help you, you look after me, I look after you, that disappears, the culture goes. How do you know where your thing has come from? Who has built it? Who has packed it? Who has brought it? You don't even have a name, you just have a phone number. Okay. Yesterday it was with someone else, today it is with somebody else. Okay. And then it takes away your freedom. In street corner shops you went where you wanted to. Here you don't have that freedom. Okay. Or sometimes even if you have, then you lose your privacy. You are telling unknown people who do not know you, they hold a record of all that you eat, buy, sell, gift, receive. Okay. You pay and you save your income, your expenditure, and there is nothing unethical about it, but there is something unethical about it. Because these people also quite often sell these data, design their ad campaigns, and accordingly you also get sometimes marketing calls. Your privacy is compromised, okay, and your freedom therefore suffers. There is no privacy. On the other hand, some people say, look, if you commit no crimes, if you are not doing anything unlawful, illegal, unethical, immoral, how does it matter? Just as you used to go to market to buy vegetables, and a lot of other people would know what you are buying. Actually, entire town would know as you came with your bag full of fruits, vegetables, fish and meat. Everyone will know what you have bought, where, for how much. You couldn't have said no, I won't tell you. Okay. So, these are imaginary problems. What matters is what you get, cheap, good, on time, without problem. And then these people also create employment. They have delivery boys, they have packers, they have sellers. Okay. Then counterpoint is, somebody says, well, they are all right, wonderful, I agree with you, so long as internet works, so long as you have money. When you don't have money, when you can't pay installments, when you can't pay EMI, equated monthly installments, then, and in times of natural disasters, cyclones, floods, earthquakes. Recent earthquakes in some countries have shown that a lot of people had cards, credit cards, membership in chain retail stores, yet they could not get a bottle of water, because how would they order? Where would the order be delivered? The roads are cluttered, jammed, network is not there, there is no electricity, there is no power, there is no connectivity. What do? You don't have cash. Okay. Rich or poor are all reduced to the same. Stand in a queue, receive your dole and feel happy. Okay. Therefore, some people say it is good to promote, at least for your daily needs, local, street corner shops, your mohalla shops, your village shops, so that your village continues to remain independent, at least in its essentials. So, when you get a topic like that, think about it for some time rather than start writing at once. Even if you have only 1 hour to write an essay, let us say you have only half an hour to write an essay. From that half an hour, if you spend about 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes at the most thinking what to write, and then another 15-20 minutes writing, and final 5 minutes revising what you wrote, it is highly likely that you will end up writing wonderful essays which will be interesting to read, which will have something to say, which will be effective. Okay. Other topics are also like that, due to internet, satellite television, etc. Due to internet and satellite television, etc., the world has become smaller, but divides have grown bigger. My country, my religion, your religion, my share, your share. Okay, these things have gone up. Is that true? Is that harmful necessarily? Similarly, what would you say, is mass transport better? Requires huge managerial effort to manage so many things. You have to take, state has to take a lot of responsibility for things which it can do without. Okay, it can direct that energy in some other channel. On the other hand, a lot of people say it makes transport cheaper, more eco-friendly, all people can get equally rapid service. So, there are arguments both sides. Okay. Then there can be abstract topic like what is education. A lot of us feel that going to school, college, getting a degree, earning a certificate is education. Of course, that is also education. A lot of people say there is something more to education. It's like building of your character, sharpening your imagination and intelligence, getting you to see good from bad, bad from good. Okay. That is also education. Now, does that kind of education happen now? Are you happy with the system? If you are, say why. If you are not, say why, and then how you can change it. Okay. Similarly, you can have lots of topics related to environment, ecology, noise, water, air pollution, light pollution, lots of neon lights on signboards in towns since dawn to dusk, since dusk to dawn, all night. Is that necessary? Who is there to look at these ads at 12 o'clock? Who is traveling or walking on the footpath at 1 in the morning? Are we not wasting so much electricity, so much energy? Can we not channel that something somewhere else with deprived community? And then while doing all this, are we not damaging our environment? Are we not polluting our air and water? So, what shall we do? Shall we change our lifestyle, or shall we go on regardless? After all, these things are never going to end, or it is not my responsibility. If other generation has some problem, they will see. Okay. Is that attitude okay? So, you can discuss. The point is, you can write, you do not have to be a specialist to write a good essay on any topic. You can write a good essay on practically any topic you like, provided, that is if, that is the condition, if you take, before you start writing, take some time to think about it. If you think carefully on any given topic, you do not have to have a specialist's knowledge to write an essay. Of course, you can also be a specialist, but you really don't, it is not a must. You can write a good essay on any topic of common interest. This is important. On any topic of common interest in a simple language. If you think slightly hard, make a synopsis, write your points, and then go into the essay. You will see that you end up writing, and of course, then as I said, for most of us, there always are exceptions of course, but for most of us, good work is always a product of several drafts, practice, etc. So, do not lose patience, do not be unhappy with yourself if the first draft of your essay itself does not give you the best, because a lot of people also have that. We do several drafts, we will come to that in a moment. Okay. While writing, we have talked about a lot of other things like vocabulary, spelling, simplicity, grammar, cohesion and coherence, but so far we have not spoken about punctuation. Now, there are over 20 punctuation marks used in writing English prose particularly. There is comma, semicolon, full stop, note of exclamation, note of interrogation or question mark as it is also called. Then there is dash, hyphen, colon, then there is inverted comma, single inverted comma, double inverted comma, quotes. Okay. Then there are parentheses of all kinds of brackets, parentheses, braces, square brackets, angled brackets. Okay. Then there is the convention of writing small and lowercase letters. All of these things are related to the writing style, the style using which you make a presentation for your reader. Actually, if you look at it carefully, we do not use all of these things every day. Hardly ever we use a hyphen or an angled bracket. Of course, an angled bracket is used these days to cite an email ID or a website address, but hardly elsewhere. Okay? Unless you are of course doing mathematics, which is a different game altogether. We are not talking about that. But in ordinary use of language, you hardly see many of those brackets. Sometimes you of course use parentheses. Similarly, all kinds of quotes, hyphen, dashes. It is not very often we use mark of exclamation or note of exclamation. Sometimes of course we use note of interrogation, but how often do we use semicolon? So, if you look at it, you feel two things. Number one, it is important to learn punctuating your writing, because writing is not a natural thing, quote unquote natural. It is not what we have been doing since our birth. We learn it deliberately at school or at home when we grow older under instruction from family, friends or teachers. Okay. Otherwise, words get into one another, merge. Earlier actually when writing began, then in earlier times, there the printers gave no gap between words. They would write all of this together. So, for example, they would say a woman without her man is nothing. This is how they wrote. Okay. In writing of Hindi and many Indian languages, we use diacritics. Say for example, we use, when you say for India, we say Bharat, we give a line here. So, Bha is the letter of the alphabet and this A is the diacritic. Or sometime we say we made a mistake. So, in Hindi the word is bhool. So, this is the diacritic. It indicates the vowel oo. So, you have bhool, a mistake. Or when you can say Indian. So, you say Bharatiya. So, this cap is a diacritic. So, we learn spelling, we learn diacritics, we learn conventions of their use, all that comes with punctuation. In other words, preparing copy for presentation. Okay? Preparing copy for presentation, preparing your script, your text for presentation, and punctuation is a very important aspect of it. If you put no gap between words, then it will be difficult for many people to understand, can lead to ambiguity, can lead to more than one meaning, there can be confusion, and the purpose of writing may not be served, it may be defeated. Therefore, it is important to learn punctuation marks, how to use which punctuation mark in which context, and then use these marks appropriately in right contexts. Okay. You will find much help in this matter from books that are called English Usage or Dictionary, or there also are books on explicit books or on punctuation, or exclusive chapters on punctuation in otherwise books on grammar, etc. Okay. In speech, when you talk, punctuation is not required because there your voice modulates. If you have a question, then the voice changes, it becomes different. In every language, in English, suppose you want to know, has the taxi arrived? Immediately your listeners understand, oh, this is a question. My friend wants to know if the taxi has arrived. Okay? There can be another kind of question. When is the taxi going to arrive? So, when gives you the clue that this is a question. Sometimes a pause gives you the question. If you don't write a full stop, you don't say, when will the taxi come? Question mark. You don't say that. Or hello, hi, great, the taxi has come. Mark of exclamation. You don't speak like that. You don't even write ordinary sentence and then say full stop. You don't say a woman without her man is nothing. Full stop. You don't say that, because your voice indicates that. But in writing, you are not there. Look at the difference. For example, this sentence. I have written it twice, but in both times, it can have two meanings. I did not have written it twice. In one go, it could have been explained. You can. It depends on the meaning. Will depend upon how you read. If you say a woman without her, man is nothing. Okay, then you are saying man is nothing. But if you read it the other way around, a woman without her man, without her man, you don't give a pause between her and man. In this reading, you say a woman without her man is nothing. So, this time you are negating the woman. You are saying a woman is nothing when she is without her man. Okay. So, like this, in this manner, the voice indicates that. But when you get printed lines like this, you do not know, then punctuation helps. Then it should be this way: a woman without her man is nothing. Okay. Or if you mean it the other way around, then you can say a woman without her man is nothing. Okay. You can form many other sentences. You can go this way, that, right. Look up the resource book we have given for how it can, a misplaced mark of punctuation can cause confusion, can cause misunderstanding, can lead to the breakdown in communication. Okay. So, there are we agree that it is important for all writers, no matter how old or young you are. Okay, it is important for all writers to pay attention to the conventions of using punctuation marks. Of about 15-20 punctuation marks, some 4 or 5 are used very frequently. I mean, they are the ones that are ordinarily used. What are they? Say comma, or stop or full stop, or question mark, or inverted comma. These 3-4 things are very frequently used. For others, and also for this, also for these, whenever you have a doubt, you can look up a dictionary, remove your doubts and relearn what you already know. Okay? So, let us look at some. So, for instance, comma. Where do you use comma? It has about 4 or 5 different kinds of uses. So, one is to separate items in a group, similar items in a group. So, when you write them, you put punctuation marks, you put a comma. Okay. So, look at this example for example, look at the following sentences or words. I take eggs, fruit, bread, milk and tea for breakfast. Suppose there are no punctuation marks, nothing, then it becomes I take eggs, fruit, bread, milk, tea for breakfast. Okay. It can also cause confusion. So, you are separating 2 separate entities of the same kind by using punctuation marks called comma. Okay. So, for example, I prefer a light lunch with a sandwich, biscuits and coffee. All right. Or the second use is to denote an adverb at the beginning of a sentence. Say for example, I take soup, fries, bread, meat, vegetables and some dessert for dinner. Strictly speaking, for dinner indicates time and it is an adverb for the verb take. So, adverb should come only after, in most cases, after the verb. It should have come at the end of the sentence, but here it is at the beginning of the sentence. So, if you change its place, then you have to indicate that change through a comma. For dinner, I take this, then it requires a punctuation mark. Sometimes you are saying something, but you want to break the flow and want to add some assertion to it. Okay. So, for example, if you some matter has been leaked to the press and somebody says the president knew about it. Now, if you only say the president of course knew about it, then you are still saying the same thing, but with greater force, great emphasis, okay, with the word or words of course. Okay. So, sometimes these words are used in speech which is rendered as in the form of writing. That is exactly what we are doing today. So, when you say the president of course knew about it, then you are saying there is no doubt about it. Okay. The president himself of course knew about it. Sometimes you also use comma to keep clauses within a sentence if you have more than one clause. Say for example, here there is a very famous quote from Julius Caesar, how he conquered England. He came to conquer France, he was on the shore and then he saw distant there is a land. So, he asked his army, go there and conquer it. So, that is what in Latin he said something. Here is the English translation. I came, comma, I saw and I conquered. Places where punctuation marks are, where comma is used. You can look up a dictionary thesaurus or a book of usage or the resource book we are giving here. Semicolon. Just as members of a group are separated with comma. So, several groups can be separated from one another by the use of semicolon. Look at the example. For breakfast, comma, I like bread, comma, egg, comma, fruits, comma, milk and tea, semicolon. For lunch, comma, sandwich, biscuits, comma, and coffee. For dinner, comma, soup, comma, fries, comma, meat, comma, vegetables and desserts. Okay. So many items listed, several groups and groups separated from one another through the use of semicolon. If that were not there, then you see it would become, suppose you remove it, then it becomes for lunch, sandwich, biscuits and coffee. For dinner, then it look like biscuits and coffee are taken for dinner, other things are taken for lunch. It is semicolon or a punctuation mark at that point which keeps the two apart. Inverted commas, in speaking, your tone says what is your word, what is one other's words. So, the Queen said, off with your head. You do not have to say the Queen said. Inverted commas begin, off with your head, inverted commas close. No, the way you say it does it, but in writing. So, in writing, therefore, to indicate that these are not the writer's words, these are the words the writer heard or the writer has taken from somewhere, it says off with his head. Or when you quote somebody, Aristotle said, comma, man is a social animal. Okay. Where do you use question marks? Obviously, to ask a question. So, in this rhyme, there is a lobster that asks others, will you join the dance? Or ordinarily, when we travel, we ask, is the train on time? Is the flight on time? Can you please wait? The clerk can tell us. All of these things are questions or requests, okay, delivered in the form of questions. Here is an essay, the topic, okay, the rubric. You can yourself create these rubrics for the relevant topics that I have given you, and you will find that your essays are a lot better written within no time. Here is some space for your practice, right? And once you have written, you need not compare if you feel happy, but sometimes you do not, then compare it with mine. I also have had to do several drafts. Here I might say only first or the second or the third, but what is my third or final? Maybe my fifth or seventh, because that is how I write. That is how many other people write. So, in the first draft, write anything you like. And I ended up using 394 words, almost 4 A4 size pages, whereas only 2 are required. So, I used twice as many words as was necessary. But in the second draft, I began cutting it. You can take a look, and in the second draft, I had fewer words than 250, which is not good. I must have at least 250, can go up to 275 or something. The third draft is rather balanced. What I have said third draft here is not actually my third draft, it is actually my fourth or fifth. The world has become a dangerous place. I am explaining the author's position. Our endless quest for speed, reach and comfort has made it unfit for life. In major cities in India, air quality index is always above 350, meaning unhealthy. The recent corona pandemic has shown how fragile human beings have become. So, in this manner, small simple sentences, sometimes if required even complex, because it displays the higher linguistic ability in you, and the examiner must know about that. So, that is fine. Develop your essay in this manner and stay close to the word count. It is highly likely that all of us can write good essays within the given limits. Okay. Finally, we are going to, this was the last unit of the module on writing. You can look up the resource pool for topics, for discussion, for aid and help and self study, but there is no substitute for practice. If you really want good English, if you really want to write and speak good English, get into this habit. You do not have to write 5 pages every day. Even if you write half a page, 1 page, you write it today, check it tomorrow. Please believe me, in no time your standards in the language will go up, will improve dramatically. Your confidence in yourself will improve proportionately at the same time, and you will be a source of joy, not just for yourself, but for all in your circle of friends and family. I have given space for you, and so thanks.